Hi, Davi here, and today we have a new episode in the art process series. And today we'll be doing an overview of my last session, and it's actually not the full session. The full session actually lasted for about 2 hours. The recording here is the second half, so this whole sketch here is basically the last hour of the 2 hours of my recent art session. And so the reason why I did this, or the topic or the theme for me for this session was to kind of figure out how to deal with my lack of details. Because in my last video, I did struggle with adding details, and that kind of made me suck, I guess, in my art. And I've gotten some comments like, "Oh shit, like it's not even that bad," or like it's actually nice seeing that kind of lasso look, that kind of loose look. I mean, I do get it, but that's kind of the key thing there. Is it's great if it's loose. And that's not exactly, it's nice, but I did want to improve or figure out a way to add details, but limiting myself to just using the lasso fill tool to add those details, I think was the wrong thing in my approach. In my last kind of, the lesson, I guess, or the takeaway from the last video was, that your art doesn't necessarily sucks, it's just your approach. And for me, I think my main issue was trying to do everything with the lasso fill tool. I think I just got too excited with the freaking tool, and I figured out, you know what? I think it's super great. Right now you can see the shape design, silhouettes, for quick concepts and stuff like that. But I think it stops there. And I think I should not try to force myself to use the tool and everything. It reminds me of the saying, if all you have is a hammer, everything will look like a nail. So what that means is, if you only have one way of doing something, you start to apply it in every single problem that you face. And so if I'm trying to do details, it doesn't mean I have to use the lasso fill as well. That's the main takeaway of this, or the last takeaway, I guess, of this art session. Because in the first hour, I did experiment. I did try using or drawing starting from contours, the old school like line work, and then doing the shadows, stuff like that. And I think I'm going to try and do that as well to improve my character art. But also in the second half, thankfully, I also realized that the solution also was not to let go of the lasso fill tool. It was still useful, but I just had to compartmentalize it. Great for the beginning stage, plotting in the major parts, the major shapes. And then once everything has been plotted, then I use a different tool. If I'm going to start cleaning things up, which is also an issue in my in my previous work, whenever I would do these concept quick sketches, it would look a bit messy, and I didn't know how to properly kind of clean them up. Maybe a little bit, but it was not as clean. So instead of trying to do everything with the lasso fill tool, I decided to just use a different tool, a brush, a normal pen, or paint brush, hard. For me, in this case, I was using a square, basic brush, no texture, no nothing, and I just used that to clean up the edges of that lasso fill sketch, right? And also to add the lighting and obviously the details. And I think it turned out great. So it kind of showed me that I don't know why I got so stuck. I think it's the same way I was stuck trying to copy things one to one. And I think that leads to bad work where you have a reference and then you try to copy that reference completely, and you don't try to use the reference for yourself. You're sort of like beholden to the reference, and I think that's the mistake I did. And thankfully, I did not repeat it here. Obviously, the reference photo is a bit it's a bit adult. It's a bit spicy, but I was so happy too with the silhouette I did in the beginning, because I naturally just pulled it the way I wanted it to. I just twisted the shoulders a bit more, or just pulled out or increased or manipulated the proportions a bit to my liking, and I was glad that I wasn't stuck. There were moments where I was tempted, where I was kind of drifting away into just that copy mode, but thankfully I pulled myself back and I was able to take things in control. And I did most of that in the silhouette stage with the lasso fill tool. So that's the lesson I learned a few days ago, or a few days back. And now the rest of the session here is just me kind of adding the actual details. Now I am using a like a standard hatching technique. I have been reviewing quite a few like ink artists the past few days in my art review series, and I think some of those people have rubbed off on me, right? Their style or that kind of ink look. It almost looks like an etched. If you've ever seen sort of etched artwork, or basically any inked artwork, it's starting to look like that. And by the way, if you see that sketch on the left hand side, I did that random doodle last night, and I did like the way just focus on the helmet part. Everything else looks like shit, but in the helmet part or in the head part, I just like the way it turned out in terms of like the ink variety, and it kind of guided this specific session I did earlier today. That maybe I shouldn't try and do everything with the lasso fill tool. I should add a bit of that variety in my work, right? So, because for the sketch in the left hand side, I essentially use the same like square brush for the really big like shapes, and also the really like hatching types of strokes. So I was able to do a lot and add. Obviously that brush is very versatile. You can use it for big strokes, small strokes. So I decided to just apply that to my lasso fill sort of a technique or approach, and I think it turned out great. So now you can see me working on the face a bit, and also using the liquify tool to fix proportions. I think is something I've also learned the past few weeks, along with the lasso fill, right? And instead of just redrawing things, repainting things, you can just move things around with the liquify tool, and also the standard lasso or any kind of selection tool, usually lasso selection, right? To move things around, play with the proportions. I think I also used the lasso fill in the beginning, lasso tool in the silhouette stage, because I think the torso was a bit too high, so I just pulled it down to make it more correct, right? So you can make these changes very quickly with your digital software, right? It's harder obviously to do this traditionally, so and now you can see me do the face, and I did focus on the hatching technique, adding the shadows first. Now before that, I obviously had to plot the eyes, the eyebrows, and the nose. Thankfully the mouth was cut off because her shoulder is there. So you'll notice I'm not actually using a lasso fill to draw any of that. No shadows, no shadow work, no even plotting in the eyes. I just used a standard square brush, hard brush. And that shows you that I don't have to do everything with the lasso fill tool. I mean, it's great and I'm still gonna use it, but I think I just overdid it, or I got too sort of excited with the tool. And kind of like the sketch on the right, I think having that brush variety it's a good look. So what I've learned also is, I think for conceptualization, the lasso fill tool, I mean, I think I've mentioned this already, but I think it's great for the beginning stages, right? For plotting out, like, again, the major shapes, the major proportions, and stuff like that. But eventually you will have to use a different brush to sort of tie things together, to clean things up, especially those edges, because you do get a lot of like artifacts when you use the lasso fill tool. And obviously to add those details. Now you'll see me kind of talk about stuff there for a while. That was the first hour session of this 2-hour session. This whole ink thing with the chick with the phone and the feet, with the bunny ears. That's the second half again. So it took only 1 hour to do that. But yeah, so I was trying to figure out ways to add more details. So maybe I thought, maybe I should start with lines too, like contour drawing. So I did kind of discuss that earlier. But eventually, thankfully, I also found out that, I don't totally have to disregard the lasso fill tool. I just have to add something else to that equation. I just have to change my approach. My art was not the issue. Like I mentioned in the previous video, it was my approach. So this was the adjustment that I had to make. Just add a different brush to do the details and to clean things up. You don't have to use a lasso fill for everything. So that's it for this art process video, or the time-lapse version anyway. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.